Stop the Zillow scroll. You know that piece of property you found, that dream piece of property, you've been looking for it forever and you finally found it? Well, I'm going to try to kill that dream real quick. And I'm going to kill it using the 4 gates: access, utilities, soil and water, and legal. That's what I'm going to use to kill your dream. And then I'm going to give you a case study of that cheap piece of land that you found too, because that cheap land always looks good, but we know it's not cheap. And I'm going to show you why that budget's going to explode with that cheap piece of land. And then if any other of the land that you're looking at actually survives these tests, then I'm going to give you a 14-day due diligence sprint to make sure that you've got everything covered before you ever get out of a period where your money goes hard. Because we're all looking for that great piece of land, right? That one that we're going to do whatever that we want on it, and we can see it in our mind. It's beautiful. You know, you're sitting right next to that rock fire pit and you've got a view, or else you're fishing in that lake that you're sitting next to. But the 4 gates I mentioned, if any one of those is locked, it can completely screw that dream up. And if you close on it before you have these questions answered, you might lose a bunch of money. So in this video, we're going way beyond the listing photos. Okay, we're going into surveys. We're going into driveway permits. We're going into line extension math for extending utilities. Everything here is built from my experience, from my buyer's experience, and from countless hours of interacting online, because that's what we all do, right? But I answer a lot of questions, and when people ask the right questions, I write them down and I make sure I answer them in situations like this. So let's get started on this. Let's talk about the 4 gates. And you know, when you hear of bank-ready land, what does bank-ready land actually mean? So the first gate is access. And again, I always start with access. And, you know, people online, boy, they'll tell you, you can't sell land without legal access. And that's, anyway, I'm here to tell you, you can. I've seen it happen. In fact, I dealt with a situation about 2 months ago with somebody that bought land that didn't have legal access to it. I couldn't do anything to help them out at that point. But when we talk about access, you want to make sure that you've got 2 kinds of access. The first and the most important one is legal access. Okay, you want to make sure that you have a deeded right-of-way or deeded access to that property. It's filed in the public realm at the county or state or city level, whatever it is, but you want to make sure that you have legal deeded access. The second type of access, and you can work on this one, but maybe sometimes you can't, and that's actual physical access. I've seen properties on my hunt in Colorado that it's a beautiful piece of property. It's waterfront, but the problem is it's on the other side of the water, and the water happens to be over a canyon that's about 75 feet deep. Oh, and by the way, that is considered national park land, and you can't build a bridge across it. So how are you going to get to the property? Even though they say that you've got legal access, you can't physically put a bridge on it. So again, gate number 1, access. Do you have deeded legal access, and do you have physical access to it? Now, just because you have legal and physical access doesn't always make it simple to get access to it. Sometimes there's what's called shared access agreements. And shared access agreements usually come with what's called a shared maintenance agreement, okay? Basically what that means is you've got neighbors, 2 neighbors, 10 neighbors, but y'all all share the same access, okay? And if you have a shared maintenance agreement, y'all are the ones that are responsible for maintaining the road. That comes into play when it's not county maintained or state maintained, or, you know, whatever locality that you're in, but the neighbors are responsible for maintaining the road. Now, if you're on a road and it's rough as all get out, and every time you drive to the property, when you're looking at it, the property's beautiful, but you're like, man, this road is horrible. It takes me 30 minutes to drive a half mile. Okay. If there's a shared maintenance agreement and the road's that bad, chances are your neighbors are not going to share any maintenance with you. So again, just because you have legal access and you have access, physical access, doesn't always make it smooth. So make sure you're paying attention to these things. The second gate are utilities, okay? Power, water, wastewater. For some people, data. Some people just want to get lost on a mountain. Some people want to have Starlink so they can work while they're up on the mountain. So whatever's important to you is important to you. But typically, utilities, especially electricity, is going to come in quoted on a per foot basis. In other words, how long do they have to extend that line to get to you? If you've got municipal water, same thing. If they've got to extend the main line to get to your property, guess who's going to pay for that? You are, unless you can get your neighbors to chip in. But again, it's all based on how much does it cost to extend that line a certain number of feet. If you don't have municipal water, you need to figure out what your water supply is going to be. Are you going to haul it in? Some people are okay with that. Are you going to do a rainwater collection? That's good in some states. Some states really won't allow it. Or are you going to dig a well? Okay, again, the extension. How deep does that well have to be? How expensive is it going to be for you to put that hole down in the ground and pump water out of it? Then the next one is septic. I've seen septic quotes in different states anywhere from $7,000 to $25,000 for the same septic system. And engineered systems can be a little bit more than a traditional system also. So I need to know up front in this gate, how much is wastewater going to cost me? How am I going to get it to the property? What's it going to look like? And back to water for a little bit. Yes, you may have to extend a main line. That's going to be one fee. But also, once you get the main line there, they're still going to make you pay a tap fee. So knowing what those tap fees are up front, or even if water's available there, just because there's a municipal line in front of you doesn't mean they have availability. They may have all the availability that line will carry already sold out. You may not even be able to have access to it. So understand that up front. Third gate that I talk about is soils and water. All right, is it in a floodplain? Are there erosion issues? Are there wetlands you've got to deal with it? Can you actually build in the spot that you want to build? Or do you have live springs or endangered species because there's a live spring nearby on that site? Yes, that will shut down a build. The quickest way to check for floodplain is to get on FEMA's floodplain map. By the way, a floodway in a 25 to 50 year floodplain is often the exact same thing, but if there is a floodway, you're not building in it. So make sure you understand the difference on the FEMA maps between what is a floodway, what is a floodplain, and then what's your insurance going to cost if you're trying to build in a floodplain? And I mentioned wetlands earlier, and again, the things that can shut down a build, if your wetland triggers some type of federal overlay or federal protection, doesn't matter, your build's done. So again, you need to know that ahead of time. And then when we talk about erosion, building suitability, septic suitability, things like that, there's a web soil survey available online. It's through the USDA, and on that website, you can check limitations, you can check soil types, you can check what it's suitable for, what it's not suitable for. Really, really valuable website. Now, it's not going to give you perfect information, so you still want those local contacts and you want the contractors and septic people and well people locally, but it'll give you a really good idea up front of, hey, can I build a house here? Is it in wetlands? Is there a lot of rock? Is there a lot of clay? Is it soil that's going to heave? They will go into detail about the suitability of an area and the soils that are located there. And that's pretty important because if you can pull up a site on that web soil survey and you can share that with your septic contractor or your well contractor, a lot of times they can say, even your septic contractor especially, they'll be like, hey, you know what? You can't do this type of septic system, but you can do this one. And then of course the question at that point for you becomes, okay, well, what's the delta? What's the difference in cost between these two? Because it could sink your budget, but at the end of the day, it may not. But again, having that web soil survey for your knowledge and for the knowledge of the people that you're talking to that are going to be building stuff there, absolutely priceless. And then the fourth gate here, we talk about legal issues and encumbrances. Okay, title is the biggest one, but also you can have restrictions even if it's not in an HOA or a POA. And then also minerals and water rights. Who owns the mineral rights? Who owns the water rights? Do you have them as the owner? Do they belong to the state? You kind of get the point. Now, when you go under contract and you open contract with a title company or an attorney fee office, whatever is common in your state, when you open title, they're going to send you schedules that have the things that you're looking for here. They're going to be able to send you deed restrictions. They're going to be able to send you encroachments. They're going to be able to send you easements. They're going to be able to send you HOA and POA docs. That's part of the job of the title company or the attorney that's going to close this thing as they're pulling records for this property. And at the same time, again, this goes back to access. While they're giving you that information, they should also be able to confirm legal access to it. Now, title company's not going to go out, and I know no attorney is going to drive out and make sure you've got physical access. That's going to be on you. But legal access, yes, they should be able to let you know. And when we talk about mineral rights, I mean, depends on what state you're in, right? States have a lot of different ways to handle this. But in most states that I know of, there is a possibility of severed mineral rights, which means that somebody else can own the rights under the ground and you can own surface rights, or vice versa. Maybe you don't own surface rights, you own what's under the ground, but that's a severed mineral right. And in a lot of states, that's a real thing. So again, just make sure up front you know what you're buying. And again, when you open title, you're going to ask them in the title commitment, make sure on Schedule B, would you please flag any reservation of mineral rights, any reservation of water rights, and make sure that you ensure all easements and all access. Again, that's something that should be done regardless. Title companies should do that, but those are the key things that you're looking for and what you're kind of wanting to see from that Schedule B document on the title commitment. And a reminder here before we move on, in Texas, I can help you with all of this. Obviously, I'm located in Central Texas. I've got contacts all over the state. Call me. I'll help you navigate it. If you're looking for a property outside of the state of Texas and you don't have local resources, again, we're talking about well people, we're talking about septic people, we're talking about contractors, driveway installers, stuff like that. If you don't have those contacts where you're looking, reach out to me, because I know so many people around the country at this point, from agents to lenders to contractors, that I can probably put you in contact with somebody who either works that area specifically, or if they don't, they're close enough to know somebody else who does. So if you've got questions, if you need help, regardless of where you're doing this in the United States, reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. Okay, now that we've got those 4 gates out of the way, and I talk about them on most of my videos, you're going to see those things on most videos about buying land online, and they're really, really important. But I want to dive a little bit deeper here, and I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about, okay, here's that cheap piece of property, and at the end of the day, is it actually as cheap as what it seems, or is there a better way to do this? So let's talk about the real numbers here. What we're looking at is 2 10-acre parcels. Parcel A looks cheap. Parcel B looks closer to build ready. And here's some assumptions that we're going to make in this deal. Let's say power line extension is going to be $15 a foot and you need 1,000 feet of an extension. Your well is going to be $11,000 on either parcel. Septic's going to be $15,000 on either parcel. Your gravel driveway is going to be about $8 a linear foot and you need 600 feet of driveway. You're going to need a culvert. You're going to need permitting. On both parcels, you're going to need a perk test and a site eval. We'll call that $1,300. And then you're going to need a survey for this, and let's say it's $5,500 for the survey on either 10-acre parcel. Okay, so let's look at scenario A first. This is the cheap land. They're asking $120,000 for this. That's $1,200 an acre. And here's what it's going to take for you to build this out. First of all, your power is going to cost you $15 a foot for 1,000 feet, so $15,000. Now, it could be higher depending on the utility company, but this is kind of an average across the U.S., so it makes good numbers, right? So we're going to say $15,000 for your power. Again, we're going to call your well $11,000, septic is $15,000, your driveway $4,800. Again, that's $8 a foot at 600 feet. And then you're going to add in a $1,500 culvert permit, and then installation and purchasing of that culvert is going to be about $5,000. Your perk test site eval is going to be $1,300. That survey again is $5,500. So your subtotal for your site work, all of that stuff that you're putting in place, is $57,600. So all in land and site work, you're looking at $177,600, and that's before surprises. I'm telling you, there are always surprises. Like you're trying to put in that culvert and you find a giant piece of bedrock, and it takes the excavation company an extra 3 days with a giant chipper to knock that rock out of there so you can put a culvert in. Guys, surprises happen. So we'll just say conservatively, $177,600. Now let's talk about scenario B. Scenario B, remember, it was build ready, but it was priced at $170,000, $50,000 more than your cheap piece of property. But there's already power at the lot line. There's either a water connection and a paid tap or an existing well. You have an approved septic system installed. You have all of your connections then, and your minor site work are going to be about $10,000, because now we're looking at, again, perk test, survey, land and site work all together. So that $170 plus that additional minor site work is going to be at $180,500. Now, you're still coming out cheaper on that cheap parcel by about $3,000, but let's remember, how long is it going to take you to get all that stuff done? How long is it going to take you to get your septic permit, your well permit, get that line extended, get all of that stuff done? Is that worth that $3,000 that you saved? And when you start calculating up these costs, especially when you run into some hidden things that you didn't know about, that cheap piece of property can actually end up costing you more, in addition to taking a longer time to be ready to build. So when you see the cheap piece of property versus that more expensive piece of property, when you're looking on Zillow, always take a look at that more expensive one and see what's actually there. It might end up costing you less in the long run, and again, it might end up saving you time. All right, now let's talk about this due diligence checklist that I've got for you. When you're setting up your contract, try to get your due diligence period for as long as possible. I mean, if you can get a month or 2 months, get it. If the landowner will give it to you, get it, because it makes things a little easier on you. You don't have to move as fast. But let's say you've got 14 days. Okay, this is a 14-day sprint due diligence checklist. Let's take a look at everything that you've got to do. Okay, days 1 and 2, open title, collect documents. Again, this is going to be done for you when you open title with the title company, but you're going to make sure to request your insured access confirmation. You're going to ask them to pull CCRs, your POA docs, and make sure you ask the seller for the last survey. Days 3 and 4, we're going to check access in the driveway. We're going to confirm that the recorded access is there in public record. If it's a private road, we need to make sure that we've got a road maintenance agreement in writing. Make sure that road maintenance agreement is in writing and then it's filed with the county. And then we're going to call whatever public entity we need to check on driveway permits and what they actually require on an approach coming off of the public road onto your land. Some of them will require that you actually pour a concrete apron coming onto your land off of that public road. You want to know that up front because that's not cheap. Make sure you get this done soon, early on in your due diligence period. Okay, days 5 and 6, we're going to check utilities. We're going to measure the power distance to the pad where you actually want the power to drop, and we're going to request from the power utility a written per foot line extension cost. We have to know this cost so that you can calculate what that extension is going to cost you. If you're putting in a well, make sure you're calling at least two different drillers to try to get a depth history and a price per foot from them. And if you're on a municipal utility system, call that municipal utility district and confirm what is the tap fee and what's the impact fees that they charge for you to get water from them. All right, days 7 and 8, we're going to check soils and septic. We're going to book an evaluation or a perk test. And you know what, guys? You may actually want to do this earlier on if you're way out in the boonies, but if you're close to a municipality, it shouldn't take you very long to get that. But book that site evaluation and perk test. And then we're going to ask the health department about seasonal windows and fees, because maybe you can't even perform a perk test certain times a year because it's either too wet or maybe it's too cold and the ground's frozen. So make sure that you understand that you can do a perk test when you actually want to do it. And then the other thing is, again, I mentioned earlier that web soil survey from USDA. Make sure you print out the limitations for your files and have those available for the well drillers and also for the septic companies. Okay, on days 9 and 10, we're going to check flood and wetlands. Again, we're going to go to the FEMA floodplain maps, and we're going to make sure that we look specifically for floodways in addition to our zones A and X. And when we're searching wetlands for the area, make sure that if you see any indicators, we're going to have to find out who we're going to consult with to try to figure out implications that may hit for that property. If you find wetlands when you're walking, or if you see wetlands online for that property, make sure to get that figured out quickly. Again, it can absolutely kill your deal in its tracks permanently. All right, days 11 and 12, we're going to check restrictions. Again, that's coming from Schedule B of the title commitment and minerals. We're going to confirm deed restrictions in your CCRs, or codes, covenants, and restrictions, and we're going to make sure that that fits the use that you have for the property. We're also going to verify those mineral reservations. Again, title company pulled that for you. And we're also going to check surface use and make sure that you've got surface use for your intended use of the property. And then days 13 and 14 of this period, we're going to field walk it again, and we're going to run numbers. We're going to walk the driveway path. We're going to put flags in any low spots, make sure that we know if we're going to need additional fill, additional grading, anything like that. And if it's possible, it may be a good idea to walk this with the contractor that's going to actually do your driveway, because then they may have to, based if there's low spots, they may have to add more culverts, things like that. So if you've got them walking it with you, you can identify issues and y'all can revise that estimate that they gave you on site in real time. And then again, on that last day, or hopefully you got a little bit of extra time, but double check those pricing scenarios. Make sure your pricing is still within your budget. At this point, you'll know if there's going to be any additional cost overruns because you've got all your estimates in. So if you need to go back and renegotiate the contract with the seller, and really the seller's not going to want to renegotiate once they know that your earnest money is at risk. All right, now that we've talked through all of that, let's do a real quick hitter on major red flags. These are things that if these happen, you have got to put all your effort into figuring out if you can get past them. Is there a cure, or are they deal killers for you? Number one, again, no legal access or no physical access. If there's no private road maintenance agreement on a road that's shared between neighbors, you really want to make sure that you're going to be able to get access to that property. You may have to buy access from a neighbor. You need to know that up front. Second red flag is there a floodway over the intended build site? If it is, you need to figure out, are there other build sites available to you, or is that the only one? And is that floodway that's going to prevent you from building there an absolute killer? The third red flag, and I've mentioned a few times now, are wetlands. If you find any mention of wetlands on your property, make sure you have a clear path forward. You could find permits that allow you to do what you want. And there's federal permits, there's state permits, there's local permits. But again, make sure you have a clear path forward, because if you don't, again, automatic deal killer. Fourth red flag are going to be unsuitable soils. And now, whether they're unsuitable for the type of construction you want to do, for septic, for your well, whatever, make sure that if you've got unsuitable soils, you can figure that out. Sometimes the people who are installing your septic or your well or whatever can find a way around that. But again, find out that answer immediately. If not, it's a red flag, it's a deal killer. If you can't get septic and water on a property and you absolutely need it for your dream, you're not building your dream there. And then the fifth red flag here is power is further than you think. Line extension costs are one thing, but if you're out there walking the site and you see a power line and you go to the utility company and they say, no, you actually can't pull off that power line because it's maxed out, you've got to pull off a one that's a half mile away, and that extension is the same cost, that might be a budget killer. So again, make sure you understand exactly where you're pulling power from, what that cost per foot extension is. Only place you're going to find that is by calling that utility company. And a reminder here before we move on, in Texas, I can help you with all of this. Obviously, I'm located in Central Texas. I've got contacts all over the state. Call me. I'll help you navigate it. If you're looking for a property outside of the state of Texas and you don't have local resources, again, we're talking about well people. We're talking about septic people. We're talking about contractors, driveway installers, stuff like that. If you don't have those contacts where you're looking, reach out to me, because I know so many people around the country at this point, from agents to lenders to contractors, that I can probably put you in contact with somebody who either works that area specifically, or if they don't, they're close enough to know somebody else who does. So if you've got questions, if you need help, regardless of where you're doing this in the United States, reach out to me. That's what I'm here for.